They did an intervention looking at traditional therapy and as well as some leading medications, as well as exercise for depression, anxiety, and just general distress. And this study showed that that exercise was 1.5 times more effective than any of these other interventions. Yoga helps us to get connected with what's happening internally in our body so that we can identify and become aware of those symptoms, those signals earlier on. Extending the exhale activates something called the vagus nerve. Say somebody is beginning to experience anxiety symptoms or panic symptoms. It's almost like a short circuit way to get the body to calm down. Graduate school was really difficult and I was experiencing a lot of mental health challenges. So I took this antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication prescribed by a well-meaning doctor, psychiatrist, and then had like every side effect in the book.
Welcome to the Superhuman Blueprint podcast.
Welcome, my friends, to the Superhuman Blueprint podcast, your resource for all things self-optimization. As always, I am your host, Drew Grissel of Primal Wellness Coaching. Please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button. If you like what we do, leave us a review, leave us a rating. If you don't like what we do, well, send me an email, info@primalwellnesscoaching.com. Let's talk about what you want to see and see if we can't make some accommodations. Reminder also that show notes for today's episode can be found at thesuperhumanblueprintpodcast.com. All right, let's get to it. Today's guest is a longtime friend of mine, Dr. Eileen Fullchange. Dr. Eileen is a licensed psychologist, a national speaker, and the founder of Fullchange Therapy. She specializes in healing from complex intergenerational and systemic trauma using holistic, strengths-based, and body-based approaches. She works with preteens, teens, and adults from any background you could think of, and specializes in individual, family, and couples therapy. Dr. Eileen also works with businesses, organizations, and schools to integrate equitable healing practices into their systems. Dr. Eileen, welcome to the Superhuman Blueprint podcast.
Good to be here, Drew.
Thank you. That may be the first time I've ever called you Dr. Eileen.
Yeah, I'm cracking up a little bit here.
I know, but got to give respect where it's due. You worked for a long time to earn that. You did.
That's true. I sure did. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, Dr. Eileen is a longtime friend of mine. And when we first became friends, you were not a doctor, you were a teacher.
That's true.
How did you go from being a teacher to being the psychologist with this very kind of nuanced focus that you are today?
Yeah. So, well, I actually wanted to be a psychologist when I was very young, and being a child of Asian parents who fit the stereotype, I could either be a lawyer or a doctor. So being a psychologist was literally funny to my parents. So I was actually on the track.
I've never heard anyone say that before.
Okay. My parents actually laughed about it, or my father did at least.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was on a pre-med track at first, which was very science-based. And then once I was an adult and could decide my own destiny, I was like, I don't actually want to do this pre-med thing.
I had no idea that you did that.
Yeah. Learn something new every day.
There you go.
And then, so I had this science background, didn't know really what to do with it, but I knew that I loved being with kids and working with kids. So I became a public school teacher, and I actually loved the job. I just hated the administrative side. And I was working in a large urban public school district where there was a lot of trauma that was coming in, trauma from both the students and the students' families, also arguably trauma being perpetuated by the school system, and then trauma in the adults coming in as well.
The adults,
and
you
so
mean the teachers?
the teachers, the administrators, the staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was just this very bad perfect storm, if you will, of a lot of stress in the environment. And I started kind of on my own time. And I really don't know how I had time because I was teaching and I was also earning my master's degree in education at the same time. But I somehow found the time to look at some research around healing and healing from trauma and resilience. And so I started integrating some of these practices that you probably actually do with some of your folks who you work with, integrating some practices into the classroom, like mindfulness based activities, gratitude practices, and other sort of uh, layperson version psychological practices into the
Wow. So
classroom.
you brought that into just your regular public school classroom.
I did.
Cool. Okay.
And
I'm
it
surprised you
worked.
got away with
Yeah.
that.
Well, this is where the story starts changing
Okay.
because I didn't get away with it for very long.
Ah, you're
I
making too much of
I
a
was
positive impact. You need to
I,
stop.
I know, and I did. The results were really astounding. I had kids who were um, they measure growth over year growth in schools, and in my classroom, I had kids who were doing 2 years of academic growth within their 1 year of time with me. So
Wow.
the results were really good, but my admin, the principal, the leadership at the time was like, Eileen, this is not teaching. And after that, I was like, but I know this is working. I see
Right.
it.
You have
And
measurable growth,
yeah,
but somehow it's not teaching.
yeah. And I was like, you know what? I do not want anybody to question me in that way again, because I know that this is working and there's evidence. And I think the main reason that I was being questioned was because I was a young teacher and I didn't have a bunch of letters behind my name. So I went and got a lot of letters behind my name.
Yeah.
And now I don't get questioned about it. It's sad that I had to go get a bunch of letters behind my name. But at the same time, I also really wanted to study psychology. I find people to be really fascinating, and I love working with people and I love supporting people in their healing journeys. It's one of the most humbling, rewarding, enriching experiences that I could
Hmm.
ever imagine.
Yeah. And, so you're working directly with mental health, and kind of on my side of things, I have to work through not necessarily the mental health aspect of a person's wellness, but I have to work through their mental state, because one of the biggest things preventing people from achieving wellness or achieving fitness or achieving specific goals related to their health or body composition or whatever, a lot of those obstacles are just mental. And
Oh
so, right,
yeah.
I have excellent training and knowledge on how to help somebody sculpt their body, but if they're mentally not ready to do those things, then we're never going to get there. And so being able to at minimum have awareness of that, right, and then figure out how to navigate those waters, because every person is different and every person has their own place that they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
that's been a journey for me, and something that when I first got into the idea of being a fitness coach, I really didn't even consider. Like, it's like, okay, teach
Mm-hmm.
someone how to dial in their exercise and nutrition and they're going to see results. Well, no, because they're a lot of the times getting in their own way, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
now work through that. But you have to work through that before you even get to the next thing.
Yeah. And I think the same can be said on the other side for the folks who are in the mental health field. Like, I was not trained in integrating body based approaches at all. And yet there's a ton of research out there showing the connection between the mind and the body.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, take for instance this mental health diagnosis of depression. Depression is very common. Um, it's actually one of the leading causes. I think it might actually be currently the leading cause of folks taking time away from work.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, so when I was first being trained in my graduate programs and in my internship and residency, there was very little focus on the fact that things like nutrition and diet, exercise, the physical environmental factors very much affect mental health. And
Yep.
so it's only now that I've been fully licensed for a number of years that I'm diving deep into this. So I think it's, our Western society tends to very much separate these two, like mind is separate from body, but that's not reality.
Well, and digging in even further, so first of all, I completely agree that in the sphere of mental health, the standard education that you get is very specific to, maybe industry norms here in the Western world. And I would say the same for the regular, the standard medical system, for the body, not just the mind, right? And a lot of my clients are in healthcare. I've had doctors, I've had surgeons, I've had nurses, I've had people that simply work in the medical field, and I'm educating them on things related to health and wellness that I feel like they should know, but they don't. And I'll ask them, and most of my sessions with clients, we start out with the conversation. Every time we meet, we chat a little bit first before we get into if we're a workout or it's a recovery session or whatever. But a lot of the time I'll approach something and be like, yeah, you probably already know this, concerning your nutrition or concerning certain types of things that you need to do physically. And I've very often gotten the response that, we touched on that in medical school, but it was, one paragraph in a book that was 900 pages. So it's like, yeah, it came up, but we didn't really do anything with it. We didn't get into it. We didn't do anything with it. We moved on.
So I imagine that a lot of what you do, Drew, is more or could be about instilling practices that are lifestyles, not just like, a diet that you do for a little bit, but it's about a lifestyle change.
That's what it
about
evolved to.
Prevention.
Yeah, originally my plan was just to coach people on fitness and nutrition. But then it quickly evolved, I suppose we can say, into lifestyle, because if people get certain things right, then everything else kind of falls into place, and that's lifestyle. It's, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you taking advantage of, the natural healing that's available out there in the world? All these things that you're looking at as well. And so, my approach started out very simplistic and evolved, I guess, similar to you, right? I mean, you were interested in mental health, but then you realized along your educational journey that there wasn't a focus on some of these kind of fundamental aspects of what resources are available to us to preserve our mental health.
Right. Yeah. And I think for a lot of folks in the wellness industry, or maybe more in the medical world, both doctors, psychologists, other folks in the medical world, we are really focused on intervening when something goes wrong, which, yes, there's obviously a place for that and that's necessary, but the best intervention, if you will, is prevention. So if we can get the lifestyle changes, then that's even better. Like my goal, if I were to do my job, if not just me personally, but if our field of mental health and psychology were to do our job really well, we would actually be able to work ourselves out of a job. Like, that's the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea, but I think that's also the block in a lot of our these industries that are supposed to be kind of bringing people to a point of not needing them, right? Well, you can't work yourself out of an industry if you're in it for profit. So we could have a whole conversation about that.
I know.
We don't even have a whole conversation about that, but that is a thing. And actually, similar to what you just said, I recently recorded a podcast with a doctor of chiropractic, and just kind of talking about patient care and all that, and he was very much in support of all of the great resources that we have in the medical system, emergency response and ER and all of that. But he was very specific in saying healthcare and sick care in in what they are right now, healthcare and sick care are not the same thing. And our healthcare industry has become a sick care industry.
Thumbs up, or I don't know, +1, whatever you do on social media these days to that.
So how did you kind of segue from what you learned in school into kind of the more holistic approach to what you can do to help people on their mental wellness journey? This episode is brought to you by the Hack Your Sleep program. Are you tired of feeling drained, struggling to stay focused throughout the day? Is low energy impacting your work and your relationships? So many of our clients at Primal Wellness Coaching used to be there too, until we introduced them to the simple steps in the Hack Your Sleep program. And guess what? As a Superhuman Blueprint podcast listener, we are going to give you access to this program absolutely free. This program isn't just about getting more sleep, it's about getting better sleep. Imagine falling asleep quickly and having nights filled with deep, restorative sleep. Say goodbye to those restless nights and wake up refreshed every day. These proven techniques will help you relax, clear your mind, and drift off into that peaceful embrace of sleep faster and keep you there longer. Even if you don't have time to add hours to your sleep schedule, you don't have to sleep more just to sleep better. But don't take my word for it. Join the Hack Your Sleep program and become part of the community of well-rested, energized individuals. Go to hackyoursleep.net and use code SUPERHUMAN to get this sleep improvement program completely free. That's hackyoursleep.net, code SUPERHUMAN to start sleeping better tonight.
I think it actually started with my own mental health journey. So in graduate school, so let me back up a little bit more. Graduate school is really stressful for most people. The rates
Right.
of mental health disorders are like 3 times higher for graduate students than in the general population.
Wow.
So I was totally normal in the sense of graduate school was really difficult, and I was experiencing a lot of mental health challenges and had actually done some Western psychotropic medication,
Okay.
which actually I was on a small dose, the smallest dose of an antidepressant / anti-anxiety medication.
Mm-hmm.
And turns out that those medications aren't normed on East Asian populations, and that specifically East Asian populations tend to require extremely small doses. And the standard, what's considered the small dose in the standard Western setting, it's like an overdose for my system. So I took this tiny half a pill or quarter pill or whatever it was of this antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication prescribed by a well-meaning doctor, psychiatrist, and then it had like every side effect in the book except the life-threatening side effect.
Okay.
Like one of the side effects I think was like excessive confidence, and that's actually a really scary thing to have. So like this is funny and not funny. It's only funny because I'm not in it anymore.
Excessive confidence. That's
It's
that's new
weird
to me. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah. So I remember being in class. It was on the second story. The classroom was on the second story. And there was like a roof outside of the classroom. And I remember thinking, I actually genuinely feel like if I went on the roof and I jumped off the roof, I could fly. Like It was a felt sense of that. Yeah. So it literally sounds crazy, right? And it's not a good side effect to have. I should not go around thinking.
No.
It's actually really dangerous. But thankfully I was, in the mental health field and trained, and I knew, okay, this is a serious side effect and I should get off of this medication. So anyway, that was one of many side effects that I experienced. So I knew that Western psychotropics were not going to do it for me. And simultaneously I had started a yoga practice. I was biking to this yoga studio that was run by someone who actually grew up in India and was trained in yoga in India. And because I was in graduate school and graduate school schedule is kind of weird and chaotic, I was in a classroom where I was oftentimes the one person who was in the classroom with her. So I essentially got one-on-one class or one-on-one instruction with her.
Awesome.
And it was life-changing. At the time during grad school, I had also gone through a really difficult death in the family. in addition to just being in graduate school. So it was a really intense time period for me. And after that, I really began to wonder about where's there a place for quote unquote alternative treatments? And they're not really alternative. They're actually like very ancient, very well known treatment modalities, just new to Western research. So yeah, I started to look into that. Shortly after graduate school, I got interested in somatic therapies, so
What is
body-based
that?
therapies, where somatic therapies are body-based therapies. So in session, where it's not just traditional talk therapy, I'm actually inviting folks to stay attuned to their body and the signals and signs that their body is giving
Oh,
them.
okay. I've
Um,
only ever taken one formal yoga class, and there was a lot of that in that yoga class. It was, feel the energy
yeah.
in your toes type of stuff.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, I mean, this is also like a whole nother podcast you could do around yoga culture, and some appropriation of it. Anyway, I will try not to make you run away in this podcast by going
Okay.
off on tangents. Um, but somatic, so I'm trained specifically in something called somatic experiencing. And the simplest version of that is we're just developing, or I'm inviting clients to reconnect with their innate intuition about their body.
Hmm.
Like we all have nervous, we all have nerve cells that go from our internal organs into our central nervous system. Just like we have nerve cells that tell us about the environment. So if I'm touching something, my nerve cells from my fingers are telling me, oh, you're touching this window, or you're touching this desk, or whatever. But then I also have nerve cells inside my body that are telling me what's going on inside my body. And because of sort of the way that our society is structured and a lot of external factors, a lot of us, and trauma, a lot of us get disconnected from the connection that our bodies have with our brain.
Yeah.
So somatic experiencing is a way of helping us to reconnect with what our body is telling us, and also the intrinsic healing properties, or the intrinsic desire to heal that the body has.
Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast with Wim Hof. Are you familiar with Wim Hof?
Mm-mm.
No?
I
The
live under a
Iceman.
parenting rock.
He's been around for a little while. He's the founder. He created the Wim Hof method, which is a method of breath work.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy that's broken tons of world records. Like he climbed Everest in like mountain climbing spike shoes and shorts and nothing else, with no training. And
Mm-hmm.
he's swam like, I don't know, long distance under 3 meters of ice, and spent like, I don't know, a day in an ice bath or something, things like that. But he uses breath work. And he was talking, I was listening to a podcast with him, and he was talking about how you can use breath work basically to internalize yourself and connect with very specific parts of your body and actually facilitate healing. And he's saying the reason that he can stay in the cold is because he can essentially go into himself and tell specific parts of his body to be warm, and they
Mm-hmm.
become warmer, and that's how he hasn't gotten frostbite and things like that. Anyway, it's out there, but there's actually a lot of scientists have tried to disprove him and ended up proving him. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know any more about it than that. I've been hearing Wim Hof for a long time, but that was the first podcast I've listened to with him, and
Mm-hmm.
haven't done any research of my own. But it's really interesting because you're talking about, okay, mental healing through kind of going inside yourself and connecting with specific parts of your body. So it just made me think of that.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of the role of mindfulness, which one form of mindfulness, or one way to practice mindfulness, is through breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like so much research around the benefits of mindfulness for mind and body. Um, there, there was a documentary some time ago around meditation and mindfulness, and they were looking at these Tibetan monks who practice mindfulness for I don't know how many hours a day, but they also were able to be in the cold for hours and hours and not have any frostbite. And Yeah, it's really, the body is amazing. If we're just given the right circumstances to allow the body's natural healing to come out, it will heal itself for most things. I'm not a medical doctor
Right.
or a physician, but there is a lot of healing power there that I think Western society doesn't really acknowledge, or is at least only starting to catch up on.
Agree. And I mean, as deep as I've gotten into the whole health and wellness thing, even I'm just barely starting to comprehend that. And there's a lot of learning to be done to just to move beyond the fundamental comprehension that this is possible.
Yeah, same
But you're
here.
trained, so I don't. Can you give me an example? So somatic experience, that's what it's called, right? So if
Yeah.
you're working somatic experience with the client, as far as they come to you for something and you want to use this technique to help them heal, like how does that go? Like how do you direct them in this?
Yeah. So I'm actually gonna direct you to. You'll have to edit this because I'm gonna. Okay. There's two things I'm thinking of. One is I actually created a series of meditations that are based on principles of somatic experiencing on
Oh,
Insight Timer, so folks can
okay.
find that, and there'll be more and more as I work on that. But generally, it's asking people when they, let's say someone brings up a traumatic event that has to do with a car accident. Oftentimes in traditional talk therapy, the therapist will say, "Tell me about what happened." And what happens internally with the body is that the body is actually reliving the experience, and sometimes it can actually be re-traumatizing.
Okay.
So instead, somatic work we might say, you can think of this traumatic incident. You don't have to tell me anything because we're not trying to replay the scene. We're not trying to go down the same path and actually increase the trauma reaction.
Hmm.
But just bring it up and notice what happens in your body. And the body will naturally do its fight flight response or a freeze response or some response.
Hmm.
And if we can slow down and notice what is the body needing. So oftentimes trauma happens because the body wants to do a fight flight response, but
Yeah.
can't for some reason.
Okay.
And so it's about noticing the fight flight response and allowing it to actually take its natural course.
And that would be what, like increased heart rate, respiration, like
It
things
could,
like that.
yep, any of those things. It could
Okay.
be, or it could just be muscles tightening.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's fight flight responses, leg muscles tightening because of the
Getting
powering
ready
up to
to
run.
sprint the heck out of there. Okay.
Exactly. It could feel like tightening in the abdomen and the core. Um, yeah, it could feel like heat or coolness in different parts of the body as blood goes or gets directed to the parts of the body that are supposed to be more active, um, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So yeah. So it's about inviting folks to notice where does the body trying to tell you that it needs, and then allowing that need to be fulfilled in a healthy kind of way.
And what does that mean? So if someone's like their leg muscles tense, like they need to sprint, how do you work them through that?
Mm-hmm. So it could be actually allowing them to tense up the muscles a bit more, or to even, sometimes I'll do work with clients where we're standing. I'm actually
Okay.
standing right now, so it's a good way to demo. Um, so it could be allowing clients to actually feel their muscles tense as if they're going to run and allow a little bit of movement and then release. So it's sort of a way of telling the body, okay, yes, you can fight and flight. You can get that energy out. You're not trapped.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
So just
Does that
acknowledging that
make,
it's
yeah.
there and allowing it to kind of run its course in a controlled way.
Yeah. So that's one route. Another route also is, so like with anxiety, I work with folks who have anxiety, and anxiety shows up in the body in a very similar way, like sweaty hands, tension in the jaw, tension in the neck, in the shoulders. And it's easy to notice those parts of the body that are activated and in distress. But pretty much, I don't think there's been any case that I've had 100% of the time, at least so far, there is some part of the body that is relaxed and that is resourced. It could be the tip of someone's nose.
Okay.
There's some part of the body that's resourced. And
What
so
does
if
that
I'm,
mean,
if
resourced?
I'm, that feels calm, that feels grounded, that feels
Okay.
okay. Sorry for the psycho jargon.
That's
I
all
need to
right.
be called out on
I'm
that.
just going to keep interrupting you and asking
Yes,
questions when I
please
don't know
do.
what you're talking about.
Please do. Yeah, so when folks are coming to see me, they say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling all of this distress. What can I do? I need you to help me in some way. I need you to give me something, a tool. My job often is actually to let folks know you actually already have the tools in you. And it might be just a feeling of calm in your toes. But we have that resource internally, and that can be really profound for people to recognize that, especially if they've been living for a really long time, feeling like they can't manage these symptoms.
That must be. Do people approach this with skepticism? Because I feel like a lot of people
Totally.
come to when they think of therapy, right? Like psychology, psychiatry. They think of laying on a couch and reciting all their problems, and having questions asked back to them they have to answer, and kind of just leaving the session like that, or maybe walking away with a prescription.
Well, thank you, Freud, for creating that stereotype. That's definitely not how I work. And I don't know anybody who works in that way in terms of laying on the couch and talking. I'm sure people do still.
See, it's because it's on TV.
It's gosh darn TV. Yeah. I think most it's understandable for people to approach this with skepticism again, because like I was not trained in this approach. And I think me 10 years ago, when I was in graduate school and finishing up or in the middle of my training, I would have been like, okay, that's really woo woo. No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So how did you evolve from the skeptic into the practitioner or the teacher?
I think it did start with the Western
yoga?
psychotropics not working. And then the yoga, yeah, it was like, this doesn't work for me. I need to find a different way.
Okay.
And for a lot of folks, yeah, go ahead.
And actually, I think we kind of segued from yoga. So how did yoga help you?
So yoga is mindfulness in movement. That's what it is.
Okay.
So
see, I'm a fitness guy. I just think of it as fitness. You strengthening your stabilizers and proprioception.
Yeah. Okay. So let me talk about proprioception. So there's proprioception and there's interoception. So interoception is the nerves that I'm talking about that go from your internal organs into your central nervous system.
Okay.
That give input to your central nervous system.
Okay.
So a lot of times when we end up going into mental health crises, it's because of something that's happened that maybe we didn't pay attention to early on to be able to intervene. So take, for example, panic attack, let's say. So oftentimes the actual panic attack, which is like oftentimes people will do hyperventilating, rapid heart rate, sweating. It's essentially the fight-flight response without a specific external stimulus that requires a fight-flight response. So imagine a bear attacking, but there's no actual bear. That's the sort of response that's happening. So a lot of folks who experience that, yeah, it is intense. And for people, it can feel very scary to experience. So a panic attack actually starts well before the panic attack. And oftentimes it starts from, I'm making this up, it could start from, I had a really rough night of sleep last night. And today I have a big assignment that's due. It's stressing me out.
Okay.
And then later down the road, I'm in class and I know that I'm late for the assignment. And now I'm starting to have a panic attack consciously without really honing into my connection with my body, my interoception. I might think the panic attack started when I entered the classroom.
Okay.
But if I were to really practice getting in tune with and develop my interoception, I might notice, well, actually, when I woke up this morning, had a bad night of sleep, and I could tell that my stomach was clenched already. Or something like that. Or maybe the night before, I watched a scary movie and I noticed my stomach was clenched, and that's what gave me a bad night's sleep. There's something that happens. There's a symptom that happens before the symptom.
Okay.
And so yoga helps us to get connected with what's happening internally in our body, so that we can identify and become aware of those symptoms, those signals earlier on. That's one thing. The
Okay.
other is, there's also yoga involves breath work. And we know that breath work, especially elongating the exhale, can increase the body's rest and digest response, which is the relaxation response.
Right.
That's what we want. We're relaxed, then the parts of our brain that are more able to make sound decisions come online, all that. And then also, it can be a form of exercise. And we know exercise releases endorphins and all these feel good chemicals. So in the moment, you get a dose of feel good. And then longer term, you also get these more longer term doses of feeling, maybe not so much feeling good, but feeling grounded, feeling resourced,
Right.
feeling calm. Yeah. So that's it in a very small nutshell. And there's a whole lot more research on yoga and mindfulness.
Sure. And just if someone's looking for yoga to that end, I mean, what do they need to look for? Because there's a lot of yoga out there, and you can, as I understand it, it goes in a lot of different directions, and not all of it is going to, I don't, at least as far as I would assume, based on what I've heard about the different types of yoga and the different classes and whatnot, you're not going to get the most out of what you're describing from a lot of these.
Sure. Yeah. I do a specific form of yoga, which is trauma informed or trauma sensitive yoga.
Okay.
Which I think I have some YouTube videos somewhere out in
do.
the YouTube world.
Yeah, you
Yes.
do. You do.
In
English and Spanish.
That's right. So folks can look for anything that's trauma sensitive yoga. That's going to increase or strengthen people's abilities to interocept, that ability to know what's happening internally. And then if you look for any yoga that focuses on mindfulness, body awareness, and also you can modify any yoga practice to be that, right? So if you are watching a yoga video that's more about the fitness component, you yourself can invite yourself to notice, okay, what's happening inside my body during these poses?
Sure.
Or can I connect my breath to these poses?
I think just on the front end, people probably need someone to coach them through that, and then
for sure.
Once they figure out how to do it, then they can just do it, right?
For sure. Yeah. Guidance is good.
Conceptually, I love yoga. I just have it's so slow for me. So I keep telling myself I'm going to give it another chance, but I think I need the right kind. Like my wife, she's been going to this yoga class where it's almost like HIIT yoga, where it's like you're holding a yoga pose, but not for very long, and you're throwing in a burpee or doing something else like that, and like that's a little more up my alley because it's faster, but I don't even want to do that. So I think I just need to go do it.
Yeah, and finding the right fit can take a while. It's sort of like, I don't know, finding the right therapist, to be honest, or dating or any other, relational interaction where it takes a while to find the right fit.
Yep.
The first few yoga classes that I did, which was like probably 10 years prior to grad school, they were of no interest to me. And I was like, I don't think yoga's worth it. Right. And it actually took a friend of mine in grad school to convince me to try it again.
Okay.
I got lucky and found the right person.
Well, I know the last time you were in town here, you had me do some yoga with you. So that was, I think that was the last time I did yoga. But it's been a little while. That was more than a year ago.
Well, I'm not sure whether to say I'm sorry or you're welcome.
No apology needed. It was good. It was good.
Okay. You could tell me off camera if it was actually good.
No, I really like, conceptually, I like what yoga is. And there's, I did P90X, right? This video workout program with Tony Horton. I love that guy. He's hilarious. Even the 10th time you hear his same joke. And he's a huge advocate of yoga. And in his first program, P90X, there was one of the workouts was a yoga workout, and it was 90 minutes long. And I tried doing it so many times, and I got so bored every time. But then in the third version, in P90X3, it got it down to 30 minutes. And I've done that one a whole bunch of times. And that one's fine because you move through it a little bit more swiftly. And it gave me a profound appreciation for the muscles that go into maintaining static holds. But not any more than that, right? I never got past, this is what I can get out of yoga, some flexibility and strengthening my stabilizers.
Yeah. And I think doing a 90-minute, I don't do 90-minute yoga videos.
It's really long.
Like it's kind of like saying, well, for any other athletic event, especially for me now as a parent, like I'm just not going to do anything that's 90 minutes.
Right. My workouts are 20 minutes now.
Yeah. Mine are about, at most 30 minutes. Like this morning I got 25 minutes. That was really good.
Yeah.
So
take it.
Yeah.
Better than zero.
So exactly. So I think especially starting out, I think 90 minutes would be really off-putting starting out.
Yeah.
Even 10 minutes would be good. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for appreciating my struggle with the original P90X yoga.
Sure.
So what else? So yoga, I mean, that was kind of your gateway into, okay, there's other ways to heal the mind. So how did you dig in from there and discover the, I guess, somatic experience and other techniques that come along with all of that?
Yeah. I can't even remember how I got introduced to somatic experiencing. I really can't remember. It might have just been reading about it, actually.
Sure.
Yeah. So, my specialty is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And trauma will show up often in the body before it shows up in a conscious way. So people will talk about like physical symptoms of being tired all the time,
Yep.
Lack of appetite or excessive appetite, that kind of thing, before they recognize, oh gosh, I'm having a trauma reaction. So I knew that I had to do some more training around body-based interventions. And I actually had tried some somatic therapy myself. I'm a therapist who's like, if I haven't done it and I haven't tried it, I'm not going to recommend it.
Okay. Good for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I tried it and it was very helpful in a very different way than talk therapy. And I'm not trying to diss talk therapy. Like I think there's a place for talk therapy and I do integrate it very much so.
Mm-hmm.
But there also needs to be some flexible use of these strategies and tools. So yeah, I started integrating somatic work into my my office, my practice, and I'm just continuing. And there's, like you said, it's not like I know it all. I think I'm just very much at the beginning too of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just starting to delve into the role of nutrition and mood. And there's again a huge amount of evidence around nutrition supporting like a healthy, well-balanced, diverse diet of mostly whole, unprocessed foods helps with mood disorders.
Yeah, I think
there's no doubt about it. Yeah.
One of the most prominent ones that I've seen acknowledged for that would be like Mediterranean.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and specifically, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
you probably know about this more than I do.
It's got a great variety of nutrients that covers a pretty broad spectrum, and it's everything from vitamins and minerals to your macronutrients. But digging in there, you're making sure you have a wide range of your essential amino acids, and you have food sources coming from all these different places, right? From the land, from the ocean, from plants, from animals, different types of plants. It's an incredible variety. And let's be honest, Mediterranean is delicious.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important though for people to know like this isn't just a one pill kind of thing, because a lot of folks
want that pill
for a one pill fix. Yeah.
They want that pill.
Yeah. And coming back to your earlier point, like that does make money. You can sell a pill. It's harder to sell a Mediterranean diet because it's a lifestyle choice.
Right.
And yet the research shows that it's not just about one pill. Like it is actually about all of these different things working together, all of these different nutrients working together, almost like symbiotically,
Mm-hmm.
that helps improve mood and improves health.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it is truly symbiotic. I'm a little sneak peek. So I'm building a wellness program, kind of a self-directed wellness program that people can do. It's a 10-week protocol, and I'm hoping to release it in the next few months. It's amazing, and it started out. It's a series of kind of small things that I had all of my private clients doing, just kind of in support of the goals they wanted to achieve, which generally were around weight loss or getting fit. But as they started to go through my protocol, evolved into, wow, I have more energy. How can we keep doing that? Right? Wow, I'm sleeping better. How can we keep doing that? Wow, my blood work looks amazing. How did that happen? And
Yeah.
and so I've refined and refined and refined that supporting protocol to the fitness and nutrition, right? This program I'm creating is not a fitness and nutrition program. It's a wellness program, and it's got all these different things in it in support of general wellness. And as I was looking at what do they really do, like how does going out in the sun contribute to a person's wellness, right? It's something so simple. People know, okay, yeah, okay, you live in Pacific Northwest United States, you're probably at a higher risk of depression because there's no sun for 9 months a year. But why does that happen? And do people that actually have access to the sun really take advantage of that, or not? And how does it even work? And so as I've been looking into all of these sort of activities or mechanisms that I prescribe, I've been digging in on, well, how do they work and what do they really impact? It's amazing how much there's crossover. All these different things contribute to better sleep or to better mental health. And
Yeah.
I'm
not advocating
incredible.
that we
I
go
love it.
back
There's so many
to
things that we
cave
can
people
do
days,
just without
but
paying any
sometimes
money
I look at this
every day
research and I'm
that
like,
make
we
us
didn't
really the best
need
versions of ourselves,
a
in
whatever,
both physically and mentally.
multi-million-dollar study to fund that, to discover that like being in nature is good, or that regular movement and exercise is
I know,
good,
right?
or that eating healthy is
Hey,
good.
we live in a society where people need that now.
I know
Actually,
it
one of
makes
the more interesting
sense. Yeah.
ones. It does. Yep, it does. That's the world we live in the Western world. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that that I prescribe to my clients, and that is a part of this program I'm creating, is cold therapy. So cold water immersion, which
Mm-hmm.
everybody hates. It is unpleasant. Do you take cold showers?
I do not. I am breastfeeding right
Oh,
now,
yeah,
which I
yeah.
hear is
Okay.
not a good idea to do
No,
that.
my wife had a terrible experience getting in a cold pool while she was breastfeeding our last kid. So yeah.
That is why I do not. It's my recollection of what you told me about what happened to Kat. Like,
Yes.
no.
Okay. Yeah. So okay.
But
So
but Omari, my husband, takes cold showers,
perfect. Good.
and it is actually helpful for his mood and his mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. So one, and I just for fun I pulled up some studies, right? Just because I love supporting text to kind of tell me that, one, either that it's generally accepted that what I think is true, or that there are studies to support that it's true. And I'm going to reference a couple right now, if you don't mind, just on
Sure.
cold water therapy in particular. So there's an article in Psychology Today titled "A Cold Splash: Hydrotherapy for Depression and Anxiety." And I'm going to skip past some of it, but part of the article, so it's water therapy versus drug therapy for mood, and it's talking about this study that they did with 237 patients with generalized anxiety disorder. They assigned some of them to medication and some of them to hydrotherapy or cold water immersion therapy. And The anxiety scores showed an improvement in both groups with clearly superior results of the water therapy compared to the effect of the drug. Remission and sustained response rates were also significantly higher in the hydrotherapy group. Also, the water therapy was found to be safe and without side effects. Of course. So that I thought that was pretty neat because I feel like this is still kind of fringe, but it's a Psychology Today article, and then there's also a PubMed, National Library of Medicine article that I pulled up on adapted cold shower as a potential treatment for depression, and essentially it's a hypothesis that depression may be caused by the convergence of two factors: one, a lifestyle that lacks certain physiological stressors that have been experienced by primates through millions of years of evolution, such as brief changes in body temperature, and that this lack of thermal exercise may cause inadequate functioning of the brain. And then two, genetic makeup that predisposes an individual to be affected by the above condition more seriously than other people. So the first one would impact everyone, and the second one just says that it may impact some people stronger than others. To test the hypothesis, an approach to treating depression is proposed that consists of adapted cold showers once or twice daily. The proposed duration of treatment is several weeks to several months, and the following evidence appears to support the hypothesis. Exposure to cold is known to activate the sympathetic nervous system and increase the blood level of beta endorphin and noradrenaline, and to increase synaptic release of noradrenaline in the brain as well. Additionally, due to the high density of cold receptors in the skin, a cold shower is expected to send an overwhelming amount of electrical impulses from peripheral nerve endings to the brain, which could result in antidepressive effects. It does conclude saying that more studies are needed, so I will acknowledge that as well, but I just found that to be extremely interesting, that something as simple as putting your body in cold weather could have a real and measurable hormonal response.
But it's not sellable.
Right. Well, everything's an industry, right? So now there's the cold plunge industry. So that's what
true.
they're selling. And
Never mind, it is sellable.
And I bought into it because I have a rather expensive cold plunge in the corner of my studio that I'm sitting in right now. And
okay,
next time
I'll
you
try
come
not
into
to
town
make
and
fun
you're
of
not
you.
breastfeeding, then I expect you and Omari to jump in there.
I'll possibly maybe consider that.
Yes. You remember my friend Noy, who owns the Krav Maga studio?
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday he was here. We recorded a podcast yesterday, and I got him in at the tail end, and he only made it 20 seconds. So the bar is pretty low to get in and stay in.
Okay. I
and
can
20 seconds
guarantee
is
you could
generous.
put a toe in. Yeah.
It's really
the
terrible.
thought of that
but,
right now is like,
yeah, it's awful.
I mean,
but at the same time, doing things you don't want to do. I could talk about that for an hour, just the effects of doing things that you don't want to do. And there's actual studies on brain growth, just in making yourself do things you don't want to do. But also, then there's the benefits of cold exposure itself. And then for me, while I'm in there, and the only reason that I can stay in there for a fairly decent amount of time is because I do breath work while I'm in there. And it's extremely calming. And, I get to a point where I become a little concerned about how long it's going to take me to feel my toes once I get out. Generally, it's about an hour. But
oh my goodness.
But otherwise, I could probably stay in there for a pretty long time. At this point, my max is 7 minutes. But if I wasn't concerned about my toes, I think with the breath work, I could go for a pretty decent amount of time.
I'd be curious. This is like me being really nerdy, but there's this thing called a dose response curve, which is like you might know this already. Like you look at the dosage of something and you see how when there's a benefit, and sometimes the dose response curve looks like, oh, you keep getting a benefit, and other times it's like you get a benefit, and then the more you do it, it kind of plateaus, and other times it's like, oh, you get a benefit and then you don't get a benefit,
right,
like that. So I'd be really curious as to what that looks like with cold
they say
exposure.
the dose response curve for cold therapy peaks between 3 and 6 minutes. You can still reap benefits up to 15 minutes, but beyond 15 minutes that you kind of start to work against yourself. There are certain people that would disagree with that. That's the literature I've seen on that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I've done 7 minutes. I generally do 5 to 6 when I go in at 5 in the morning, which is horrible time to go into a cold plunge because your body's not warm, you're tired, it's just
Mhm.
awful. But that's when I usually go in, and I usually try to do about 5 minutes.
Wow. Well, kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks. I stand. I've gotten past the point where I stand in front of the tub for 3 or 4 minutes, just thinking about not doing it. I just get in now,
Mhm.
which is a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting that it's become a very popular fad, or I don't know what to call it, popular trend now, because this is
Mhm.
again something that's been around for a while.
Yep.
Like since, well, you probably, I don't know. My understanding is it's been around like since 3500 BC or something with the Romans and the Greeks and stuff.
Yeah, and
But it could
in
be, yeah.
more recent times, and maybe only a few hundred years ago, in Scandinavia, right?
Yeah.
It's a big thing in Scandinavia.
Yeah. So it's like on the fringe to us as, Westerners in 2024, but
Well,
it's been around. So,
things like going in the sun and putting your feet in the grass have become fringe.
I know that's really sad.
It is. But we're
Uh,
working to flip the switch, change the narrative. It's
yeah,
okay to
that's
just
right.
be a human being in a human body connecting with the things around us.
That's right. Yeah. It's like, let's come back to the basics, to what we
Yeah.
already know intuitively. Yeah.
So do you use breath work at all in your sessions?
I do. Yeah, very
Okay.
much so. And there's different types of breath work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like breath work isn't just awareness of one's breath,
Right.
which that can help develop just general mindfulness and general
Okay.
awareness, and kind of it helps people to not be so attached to their own internal reactions and to be able to just see their internal reactions as a reaction versus themselves. Then there's breath work also specifically to regulate. So if folks are getting activated, then I do one of my favorite things to do is something called straw breathing. I
Straw
call it straw
breathing. Okay.
breathing. Yeah,
You
I
coined
call it
that
straw
one?
breathing. I probably stole it from someone. I
Okay.
don't remember.
Okay.
Um, but I tell people to imagine that they're just doing a normal inhale, and then you're breathing out through a straw, and it's not a boba tea straw. It's a little tiny soda straw.
Okay.
So it's like inhale, and if you might notice, it extends the exhale by quite a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And do you go until you're totally empty?
Yeah, it's just a normal inhale and exhale. It's just
Okay.
modifying the exhale.
Hmm.
So you're not trying to force it to be anything other than the normal amount of empty.
And so what is the
Um,
purpose of that? Is that just to put awareness on your breathing?
it does have that effect, but also more importantly, extending the exhale activates something called the vagus nerve.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Love the
have,
vagus nerve.
yeah, woohoo, vagus.
We should
Okay,
all love the vagus nerve.
yes. So it's a very calming. It's an immediate physiological, calming, relaxing sort of response
Mm-hmm.
that that say somebody is beginning to experience anxiety symptoms or panic symptoms, or starting to ramp up to more elevated distress. It's almost like a short circuit way to get the body to calm down.
How does breathing interact with the vagus nerve? I feel like I should know this, but I don't.
Yeah, so it's the extending the breathing that
Mm-hmm.
activates the vagus nerve. So it's the diaphragmatic breathing, if you will.
Okay.
There's
Yep.
other things too that can stimulate the vagus nerve. So like humming, like
Mm-hmm.
going,
I know. That's why
and
I hum to my baby when he's getting a little antsy.
yeah.
Yep.
So that stimulates the vagus nerve also.
Can
So
you
it's a nerve
can
that
you
goes all
explain
the
what?
way.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Explain what the vagus nerve is.
yeah. So it's a nerve that it parallels the spinal cord and goes into your diaphragm, your bowels, it all goes kind of throughout your body, but it's
The
stimulated by certain
diaphragm. Okay,
physical, yeah,
that's okay.
yeah,
That's physiologically that's where the breath work can
yeah.
can make the
Hmm.
physical impact. Got it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so like talk therapy, again, there's a place for talk therapy, but oftentimes telling yourself, no, I don't need to panic. It's not going to work
Right.
because the panic is happening physiologically. So we need a physiological intervention.
Yeah.
Um,
I was in a situation yesterday afternoon with, I was helping a friend just take care of some personal things, and he's in a pretty bad situation with his family. He's been taken away from his family, and we were just in a situation where he was going to see his children at a distance when he wasn't meant to, and he hasn't seen them for a month, and he was he was becoming very, very upset about that, like the trauma that he was about to experience. And so I just made him
yeah,
breathe. I counted for him. I'm like, you're just gonna, simplest thing, box breathing. We're
yeah,
gonna count, and you're gonna breathe.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, he came through it without losing it, which was good. But kind of a
yeah.
extreme example of when breath work can be helpful. But
Hmm.
it really is incredible how something as
Yeah,
simple as controlled breathing can have um, a emotional or mental manifestation.
yeah. And this is something we also got to teach our kids from an early age.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you hear that a lot, right? Just breathe, take a deep breath. I've been hearing that my whole life. I never really knew what it was and never actually took a deep breath, but
Mhm.
you hear it. So at some point, people knew that this did something, and then
Right.
it kind of just became something that you say when someone's upset without
Yeah.
thinking about whether or not that actually does anything. It's kind of just like shut up and calm down, take a deep breath. But oh wait, it actually does something.
Yeah. And hopefully it's said in a way of, I want to hear you and
Yes,
let's take a
hopefully.
deep breath. Yeah.
So what other techniques do you use for this? So we've talked about breath work, we've talked about yoga, we've talked about the somatic experiencing. What
I,
other
I,
kind of things do you
yeah.
do?
I don't think we've talked about exercise specifically, like
We
exercise more
haven't.
broadly
How
as
have we
an
not talked
intervention,
about exercise?
which I feel like we should talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually have started to go away from the word exercise to just
Okay.
physical activity
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
for some people, exercise is very intimidating. They
Yeah.
imagine going to the gym and having to put on workout clothes. There's a lot of mental barriers to it.
Yep.
So I've been using the word physical activity
Okay.
and also because for a lot of people, physical mobility is a challenge, either physically, physiologically, or mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I want to mention exercise because I was just reading a study recently where they did an intervention looking at um, traditional therapy and as well as some leading medications, as well as exercise for depression, anxiety, and just general distress.
Mm-hmm.
And this study, I think it was based in Australia, if I'm remembering correctly,
Crikey.
showed that that exercise was 1.5 times more effective than any of these other interventions.
Wow.
So,
That's
so
staggering.
yeah, yeah, I want to mention that. And before reading this study, I knew that there were some studies showing that it was just as effective. So this is the most recent study, and that it's especially beneficial for certain diagnoses, like especially
Mm-hmm.
beneficial for depression, especially beneficial for pregnant and postpartum folks, and also certain physical conditions, physiological.
Today's episode is brought to you by PowerPlate. Vibration therapy, usually delivered through platforms like PowerPlate, offers a wide range of potential benefits for physical health and well-being. I'm talking enhanced muscle strength, improved circulation and blood flow, increased flexibility and range of motion, faster recovery from soreness and injury, and one of the coolest benefits, which is leveraged even by astronauts, is enhanced bone density. How cool is that? For me personally, any workout I do while standing stationary is done on my PowerPlate vibration platform. PowerPlate uses something called triplanar vibration, which is superior to other vibration platforms. It's really interesting. When I stand on it, it almost feels like gravity increased, like I'm being pulled towards the ground, which puts a unique spin on doing your traditional bodyweight workout movements like squats and push ups and really anything you can do while standing still. So pick up your PowerPlate at powerplate.com/primal and use code PRIMAL for 20% off the PowerPlate vibration platform. Again, that's powerplate.com/primal. Use code PRIMAL for 20% off. And I've flipped the switch on myself for that, particularly since I started wearing this step tracking ring, and I pay a little bit more attention to my movement. More as a point of interest than anything else, because I do move enough. But I think about that. I'm chasing the kids, right? I'm running back and forth down the hallway. We're playing, but I'm getting some exercise, right? I'm dancing with the kids in the kitchen. I'm running circles around the dining table, just dancing with the kids. Hey, I'm getting my movement in. I'm gonna take the baby for a walk, throw him in the stroller, and walk down to the coffee shop on the corner. Well, we're going for a walk, and I'm getting my coffee, but I'm getting my movement and some sunshine, and kind of acknowledging the dual benefit that I get to just living certain enjoyable parts of my life. And actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because I did want to talk about this and I forgot. And I pulled up another article that I wanted to kind of share with you. And this is also from the National Library of Medicine. What is this called? Let me see. It's called The Benefits of Exercise for the Clinically Depressed. And so in a section of the study, under proposed mechanisms for the exercise depression relationship, so how does exercise impact depression? So it addresses a bunch of different hypotheses, which I thought was really interesting. So one is the thermogenic hypothesis, which suggests that a rise in core body temperature following exercise is responsible for a reduction in symptoms of depression. Increases in temperature of specific brain regions, such as the brain stem, can lead to an overall feeling of relaxation and reduction in muscular tension. Then there's the endorphin hypothesis, which predicts that exercise has a positive effect on depression due to an increased release of endorphins following exercise. Endorphins are related to a positive mood and an overall enhanced sense of well-being. And then there's I don't know this word, monoamine hypothesis. This is the most promising of the proposed physiologic mechanism. The hypothesis states that exercise leads to an increase in the availability of brain neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine that are diminished with depression. These neurotransmitters increase in plasma and urine following exercise, so that's how they were able to measure that. But whether exercise leads to an increase in neurotransmitters in the brain itself specifically remains unknown. So the study is incomplete, but it's a hypothesis. And then there's a whole bunch more, like distraction hypothesis. So you're distracted from being depressed while you exercise, and self-efficacy hypothesis. You get a sense of accomplishment just from doing something that you said you're going to do that maybe you didn't want to do. So it's a pretty lengthy article, and there's a lot of statistics and references in it, but it's very interesting. The article is very interesting because it talks about all of these different hypotheses of why exercise impacts depression specifically. And one of the ones that's easiest for me to buy into is the hormonal response, because you can actually measure that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you also then prescribe movement, or do you just ask people to pay more attention to their movement?
No, I do actually prescribe. I'm not a prescribing person, but suggest physical movement. Yeah, very much so. Okay. And I do very much phrase it in terms of, we can call it exercise, but really anything that gets you moving. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be all at once. It could be in segments, but really any movement at all is better than no movement. And that can be a little bit hard to do. So I just want to acknowledge that outside of physical mobility challenges, there's also more systemic challenges. So not living in a neighborhood that allows you to get outside, or being in a job that requires you to be sitting all day long, that kind of thing. Or even just the amount of time that people are being asked to work. Those are barriers.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the reality. And also, I still try to work with my folks on how to integrate movement in some way throughout the day.
Nice. Yeah, one of the aspects of the program I'm putting together is exercise snacks. So
Yeah.
For people that either don't want to do a workout, don't have time to do a workout, or just want to incorporate more movement into their day in addition to their workout. It's just taking 1 minute or 3 minutes multiple times a day to do something, to do a few
Yes.
squats, or to just walk, or really anything. It's not very specifically prescribed because of exactly what you said. People have limitations that are unique to their bodies. People have unique limitations based on what they're doing and where they are. But the what I am advising them to do is just pick something that you can do and do that, for this duration or this many reps, this many times a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. And it's a lot better
And
to start
again,
with something that's easy to succeed at.
yeah, absolutely. And it can impact physique. It can impact energy. It can impact general, like, just immunity, right? If you don't move, your immune system is not functioning optimally. If you move, it works a little bit better. Mental health. There's all these things that just moving can do.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many things that all these simple things can do that, there's a guy, a human biologist named Gary Brecka, and he has a phrase that he loves to use that he kind of coined, which is, aging is the aggressive pursuit of comfort. So we live in a world where we do anything we can to not put that extra work in, and it is having a very, very negative effect on us as individuals and as a society. Trying to get that close parking spot. People will literally spend an extra 5 minutes circling a parking lot getting mad because they're not getting that close parking spot, instead of just parking further away, maybe getting a little bit of movement, maybe some sunshine in while they walk from that further parking spot to the door of wherever they're going. That's a very simplistic example, but that type of attitude is prevalent, right? Try to have everything as close to us as possible so we don't have to move to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been kind of sold to us as this is what makes a good life.
Yeah, these are benefits, not detriments.
Yeah.
Or so they say.
Yeah. So you go, changing the narrative.
Yep. Okay. Last question for you before we wrap. You are a new mom. So how are you managing your own mental health in new motherhood? Because that is no joke.
Nope, not at all. I definitely experienced postpartum anxiety and depression for sure. I don't think I'm clinically, what's the word? Clinically diagnosable at this point, although I think I have just general motherhood anxiety.
Yeah.
All parents become a little more anxious, I think. Yeah, it is. I think postpartum mental health is not talked about enough at all.
Mm-hmm.
In our society. I also don't think our society is set up to actually support new parents' mental health. We
Yeah.
are the only industrialized nation that does not have guaranteed parental leave. There are, I think I wrote this down. I actually looked into this recently. There are 17 countries who have a 1 year or nearly 1 year parental leave policy.
Yeah.
And these are countries that,
to me, that sounds incredible, but I guess that I feel maybe that should just be normal.
It should be normal. And I also know from my training as a child and family psychologist that the first 2 years of life are the most important in terms of how kids are going to be for the rest of their lives, and how they relate to other people and how they see the world. It affects something called attachment. Attachment is formed within the first 2 years of life. Some people say first year and a half of life. And yet we have, for many of us, we have to go back to work immediately or go back to work within a couple weeks.
Right.
So yeah, we don't talk about this enough. At the same time, I personally am learning so much,
right,
and appreciating so much about being a parent. As hard as it is,
it is really hard.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And
most
people say that it's
thing
hard
ever, but really hard.
Yeah, people say it's hard, and I knew that it was hard, but knowing it from a felt sense is really different than just hearing about it. And it's hard in different ways. It's hard for me as the person who gave birth, really hard physically, especially because I knew about exercise being good for mental health and was practicing what I preached. And then all of a sudden I couldn't exercise, or my idea of exercise was walking around the block. Or sometimes I remember early on, it was like walking outside and then coming back in. And that was my exercise.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's a lot I think that we could do better about addressing parental mental health, and not just for moms. Like the rates of postpartum depression and mood disorders for dads in heterosexual couples is also, I think, higher than is needed, 1 in 10 or so.
Oh, okay.
For moms, the estimates are as high as 1/3 experience some sort of postpartum mood disorder.
Yeah, well,
and when
I
I
mean,
hear that, that's unacceptable.
It is, but at the same time, and you're the expert here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like to a degree it's unavoidable, because some component of that, I mean, there's the whole coping with just the change to your lifestyle, right? And the drastic change to your lifestyle and being sleep deprived and all that. But then there's also like there are true hormonal changes within a woman that would play into that.
There are, so 80% of women experience the baby blues within the first couple of weeks. That's normal. But in terms of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis, that's not the norm. And that varies by country by a lot.
Okay. Oh, really?
And we actually,
by country?
And by parental leave policy specifically.
Oh, okay.
We know that folks who have longer parental leave have, whether it's paid or unpaid, it's just parental leave. And I obviously advocate for paid, but folks who have longer parental leave have significantly reduced postpartum depression and anxiety. So we already know that this is not something that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
But I think there's a narrative in the United States, certainly, that this is just something that happens. And I really want to push back against that, because it shouldn't be the norm. And we know also that depression impacts kids. So parents who are depressed raise kids who are less well-adjusted than when a parent is not depressed, and they can be attuned and they can be present.
Yeah,
obviously.
That makes sense, but I kind of feel like that part of the equation is often overlooked.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So yes, like I will, keep working with my folks who are parents around mental health. And also I fantasize about the day when I don't have to do that, because we have these policies in place that actually support the well-being of parents.
Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of parenting, I am going to have to get going because my little one is up.
You can hear her?
I have a app that tells me Omari got her, and she's up.
Got it.
As of 6 minutes ago.
Mom is in demand. All right. Well, Dr. Eileen, this actually, we joked about before I hit record that you always try to talk to me about serious things, and I always try to change the subject. But this has actually been a really nice conversation. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with me and with the listeners as well. And folks, if you want to find Dr. Eileen, you can find her at drfullchange.com. And I will also link to that in the show notes. So Dr. Eileen, thank you for being here. It's been really nice chatting with you.
My honor, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Drew.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.